Hello, in this video, I'm going to discuss how to connect to AWS EC2 using Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, which is a common method to connect to a Windows server using a graphical user interface. This is part 1 of how do I connect to my EC2 series. I'll start with a quick demonstration. Then I'll go through the steps to build this solution and conclude with some pros and cons of this RDP solution and discuss several alternatives you may want to consider. So let's begin. Here I have an EC2 instance named Demo Public Windows in the US West 2 Oregon region. On my laptop, I have an RDP client software called Windows App. This is a free software I downloaded from Microsoft which allows me to connect using RDP from my Mac laptop. You can use other RDP software. So I'm going to connect from my laptop over the public internet to my EC2 instance in AWS. So the first thing I'll do is add a PC. For the PC name, I can use either the public IP address or the public DNS of my EC2. I will use the public IP address. And I'll click on Add. When I now double click to connect to my EC2, it's going to prompt me to ask for username and password. To get this information, I'll go to the Connect to Instance page of my EC2 in the RDP Client subtab. Here I can get the username and password. I got this password by decrypting it using the key pair that I used to launch this EC2. So I will copy paste the username and password. Now I'm connected to my EC2 using Windows App using RDP. I'm presented with the Windows desktop of my EC2 and I can navigate to local files and such. So this is a simple demonstration of using RDP Client App to connect to EC2 over the public internet. Now let's look under the hood to see how this works. Here I have a diagram of the solution. I will explain each component and how you can build this for yourself. By the way, if you want to get this diagram and steps to build a solution, see the links in the description of this video. The goal is to launch this Windows EC2 instance and be able to connect from my laptop using a remote desktop client software over the internet. But before I launch the EC2 instance, I'm going to first configure several networking components to explain the details. So let's go to our console and build a solution. For this demonstration, I'm logged into the AWS console as an IAM user named Stuzio Admin. In the IAM user page, you can see that this user has administrator access permission, so I am able to create just about any resource in this account. So the first step is create the virtual private cloud VPC and the subnet. On my console, I'm on the VPC dashboard. I'll click on the Create VPC. I'll use a VPC only option. I'll name my VPC Demo VPC. For the CIDR, I'll enter 10.0.0.0/16. I'll leave everything else as default and click on Create VPC. Before I move on, I'm going to enable the DNS hostname. Notice that currently the DNS hostname is disabled. So I'll go to Action, Edit VPC Settings, check the Enable DNS hostname. If you enable this setting, then your EC2 will get assigned a public DNS name that we can use to reference it from the internet, like a public IP address. Next, I'll create the subnet. Click Create Subnet, and I'll select my VPC. In this case, the demo VPC that I just created. I'll name this subnet Demo Public Subnet. I'll leave the availability zone as no preference because it doesn't matter for this demonstration. For the subnet CIDR block, I'll enter 10.0.0.0/24, which is a subset of the CIDR block of my VPC. I'll leave everything else default and click on Create Subnet. The next step is to create the Internet Gateway and the route table. The purpose of this component is to create a networking route so I can connect to the EC2 from the public internet. So I'll click on Internet Gateway, Create Internet Gateway. I'll name my gateway Demo Internet Gateway. Notice that the state is currently detached, so I have to attach this to my VPC. I'll go to Attach to VPC and select my Demo VPC and click on Attach Internet Gateway. The next thing I'll create is a route table. Just because we have the internet gateway doesn't mean any traffic will be routed to it. We need a route table that instructs the subnet what traffic should be routed to the internet gateway. So I'll click on Create Route Table, and I'll name this route table Demo Public Route Table. And for VPC again, I will select the Demo VPC. Create Route Table. Notice that the route table has the default route for the local. We need to add a route for the internet gateway. I'll click on Edit Routes, Add Routes. For destination, I'll select 0/0, which is all internet. For target, I'll select Internet Gateway and my Internet Gateway Demo Internet Gateway instance. Click on Save Changes. Okay, so now I have 2 routes on this route table. I now want to associate this route table to my subnet. I'll click on Subnet Association, Edit Subnet Association, click on my Demo Public Subnet. So now I have a route table associated with my subnet that instructs all destinations other than the local VPC CIDR should be routed to the internet gateway. The last step before creating my EC2 is to set up my security group. Security group is a type of firewall that specifies what type of inbound and outbound traffic will be allowed for my EC2. For my use case, what I want is an inbound rule that allows RDP traffic on port 3389 from my laptop IP. So let's go ahead and create this. Back on my VPC AWS console, I'll click on Security Group. Create Security Group. I'll name this security group Demo RDP Security Group. For VPC, I'll select Demo VPC. For my use case, I don't need any outbound rules, so I'm going to delete this. I'll create one new inbound rule. For the type, I'm going to select RDP. Notice when I select this, the protocol and port range 3389 is already selected. For the source, I'm going to select my IP. This is a public IP address of my laptop. Now I'm going to create security group. Now that we have all the networking pieces completed, I am now ready to create my EC2 instance. This will be a Windows EC2 server that I'm going to place into my demo public subnet. So now back in my console, I'm on the EC2 service page. I'll click on Launch Instance. I'll name this instance Demo Public Windows. For the operating system, I'm going to select Windows, and then I'll use the Microsoft Windows Server 2025 base AMI. For instance type, I'll leave the default T3 Micro. For the key pair, I'm going to create a new key pair. This is a public and private key pair that is associated with this EC2. We will need this key pair to decrypt the administrator password. So I'll click on the Create New Key Pair, and I'll name this key pair Demo EC2 Key Pair. Create Key Pair. Notice that when you create this key pair, it gets automatically downloaded to your local machine. Be sure to keep this file secure. Next, we need to set the network settings. I'll click on Edit. For the VPC, I'll select the Demo VPC. For the subnet, I'll use the Demo Public Subnet that we created. For the auto-assign public IP, I'm going to enable this option. This way, when the EC2 instance gets launched, I'll automatically get a public IP address, which we will need in order to RDP into this instance. For the firewall security group, I'll select the existing security group and select the Demo RDP security group that we created. And that's all the setting that we need. I'm ready to launch the instance. I'll go to the instance detail, and it'll take a few minutes for the status check to complete. Notice that my EC2 instance has a public IP address as well as public DNS. Recall that when we create our VPC, we enable DNS hostname. Therefore, we get the public DNS. Now I'm ready to RDP into this instance using my Windows app RDP client. Now that I have all the networking components and the EC2 launched, I'm ready to RDP into this EC2 using my RDP client. On my Mac laptop, I have installed this application called Windows App. This is a free application from Microsoft. I'll add a new PC. Here I have to specify the PC name. The PC name can be the public IP address or the public DNS of my EC2. So back in my console, I can get the public IPv4 address of this EC2. I could also use the public DNS if I want to. Now I'll add a PC. Now I'm ready to connect. Again, it prompts me for username and password. In order to get this, I'll go back to my console and I'll click on the Connect button and go to RDP Client. Here I have the username, but I need to get the password. In order to get the password, I'll click on password and I'll upload the key pair that I used when I launched this EC2 instance. Recall that this is the key pair that I created when I launched this EC2. It was downloaded to my local machine. So I'll select this key pair file and then click on Decrypt Password. Now I have the administrator password in a plain text. I can use this information to now RDP. I'll copy the administrator username, then I'll copy the password and click Continue. Now I'm on the desktop of my EC2. So now I have successfully RDP into this EC2 instance. You can see that using an RDP client application to connect to your EC2 is fairly straightforward. However, this solution has some drawbacks. First, you need a private key to decrypt the administrator password. This may not be a big deal if you're working alone or in a small team, but imagine if you have thousands of servers with hundreds of people who need to connect. Now you need to either distribute thousands of private key files or passwords to hundreds of people. This can quickly get out of hand as people come and go and new EC2 servers are spun up and terminated. Another issue is that anyone with the username and password can connect and doesn't require any AWS IAM authentication. So if the password got out, it represents a serious security risk. Finally, the EC2 needs RDP port 3389 open for connection, which is another potential security concern. So while RDP Client Connection is simple, it may not be the best option for large organizations that require a more scalable and secure solution. This is where you may consider solutions like using Active Directory to domain join your EC2. Another option is to use AWS solutions like Session Manager, EC2 Instance Connect Endpoint, or Fleet Manager, which uses IAM permission. You can see here some of these solutions don't even require a public IP or RDP port to be open. You can learn more about other RDP solutions in the video links in the show notes. Well, I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching and keep on building.